Welcome to Biblio Files. This is the show on AADL TV, brought to you by the Ann Arbor District Library, where each episode we take a few minutes to talk about one book topic. And the book topic that we are going to discuss today is the last great book that you read. I'm Lucy, and as usual, I'm here with Amanda and Christopher. Christopher, what was the last great book that you read?
Well, I was so happy a year ago. I got a book recommendation from my cousin, and don't tell anyone, but the library made me wait a whole year before it finally came up on my holds list. It's The Unseen Body by Jonathan Reisman. This is a great book. It's very short. It's super, super fast reading. It's 15 chapters of different body parts. So, and I should say it's written by a medical doctor, and he talks about lots of his patients, and he weaves in all kinds of other philosophies on life and his travels and his marriage, and so much is going on that relates to his medical practice. As I said, there are 15 chapters, and he looks at things like the liver and blood and your throat, lots of parts of the body. And he even talks about things like the old practice of applying leeches, which is still done. There's so much in this book that's fascinating. So you'd never believe where and why leeches are used today, but you'll have to read the book to find out. So I think that fans of Oliver Sacks would really appreciate this. And in fact, it's given me a kind of new insight into what my doctor thinks about when I go to see her. So that is The Unseen Body. It's great. It's super fast. And I want to thank my cousin for the recommendation. All right, Amanda, what did you read?
Well, that book sounds really fun and totally different from the book that I chose. This book was a great read from a couple of reads ago, but I thought it was a fun one to talk about. And the book is Hello, Molly, written by Molly Shannon. It was published in spring of 2022, so fairly recent. And I first heard about this book because I saw that it popped up. I follow a bunch of libraries online, and it popped up that Toledo Public Library was having her there for a visit for the book release. And I was like, huh, Toledo? And then that was how I found out that she's from Cleveland, Ohio, which I thought was really cool. And then a little while later, a friend recommended the book, and I was like, okay, I'm going to check out this book. And I waited a while for the audio, and I listened to the audio, and the audiobook is amazing. I really love this book. It's not just funny. There's also a lot of it's a memoir of sorts. So there's a lot of sad moments of things that happened to her early in her life. But I was laughing, I was crying. And her as a narrator, she has that characteristic enthusiasm. And these are all sad and happy and poignant moments in her life. So you can really feel the emotion behind how she's how she's narrating the words that she wrote. So the book, it's under 300 pages. It was a 7-hour audio read. And for me, that's a great 7 hours is a really nice length. But it starts kind of somber. It starts by telling the story of when she was 4 years old, her mother, baby sister, and cousin were killed in a car accident where her father was drunk and behind the wheel. She survived, and another one of her sisters did, and her father. So after this accident of when she was 4, this trauma just stays with them because it upended their entire lives beyond that moment. So she talks a lot about the grief that her father was going through and trying to stay sober, trying to raise 2 small girls, and also managing his own grief of losing his wife and his life partner. And apparently the mom, his wife, was just delightful. She was a librarian. And so Molly talks very dear about the mother that she doesn't have a lot of memories of because she was only 4 when she lost her mom. So she talks a lot about that. And then eventually the complicated relationship she maintains throughout her life with her father. But in the end, she still adores him to pieces. So she talks a lot about that. And I really enjoyed those parts in the book where was her talking so openly and candidly about her relationship with her father throughout and up until he passes away towards the end. But also, of course, she's Molly Shannon. She's a comedian. So some of the book talks about when she's young and leaving home and just the shenanigans as a young adult trying to like get a job and make money. And then she also wants to make it into show business and become or join comedy troupes and get into comedy. And eventually, of course, she ends up on SNL in 1995, and she was on there, I think, for 7 years. So there are some funny stories of behind the scenes with her and some of the other cast members and after parties. So I enjoyed that because she's a great storyteller. It's just there's a lot in it because you're crying one minute because there's these terrible things going on in their lives that they're still within them. And then there are these funny moments of like some of the characters she created. So after I read the book, I went on YouTube and just went down the rabbit hole of watching some of the bits she's done over the years, which was a pretty fun way for me to wrap up the book. But eventually, you know, she leaves SNL, she ages, she gets married, she has her own kids. So, and then she talks about like her father and his old age. And it's just really, really well done. And it's incredibly readable. I know multiple people who read it and enjoyed it. And I was kind of surprised when multiple people were like, oh, I read that, I loved it. And I was like, okay. And that doesn't happen where you have like 9 people telling you that after you mention a book online. So I was like, okay, this book is in many hands. And if it's not in someone's hands and they want like an easy, fun, heartfelt read by a comedian, put this one on the list. That is Hello, Molly by Molly Shannon. Lucy, what did you bring to talk about?
Well, those both of your books are so different, and they both sound like something I want to read or listen to right now. So that's really cool. The one that I am talking about, the last great book I read, I finished yesterday, and it is called All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. This book won the Young Adult National Book Award in 2022, and the author is the first Muslim and Pakistani woman to win the award. It's a really great book, and I'm glad it won the award. It goes back and forth between the past and the present, and between Pakistan and Juniper Beach, California. And it's about 2 teenagers, Noor and Salahuddin, and they live in Juniper Beach. And then the parts in Pakistan are Sal's mother, Misbah, when she was growing, kind of getting married, like her marriage was being planned for her, and then when she moves to the United States. So Sal's parents own a motel, and Noor lives in Juniper Beach with her uncle. She works in his liquor store. Her parents were killed in an earthquake. Her whole family, her whole town was killed actually in an earthquake in Pakistan when she was 6. And her uncle came and dug her out of the rubble and rescued her, which is a big part of this book because she feels like she has this obligation to her uncle no matter what he does. So Noor and Sal are best friends since they were like 6 years old. And Misbah, Sal's mother, sort of becomes Noor's mother as well. They're all just really close. And Misbah is terminally ill and not taking care of herself, and she dies. And that's not really a spoiler because it happens pretty close to the beginning of the book. And it's important because one of the things that this book deals with, I think, is a lot of trauma and buried trauma, and how do you get through these kind of things. So Sal's parents own this hotel. His mother has died. His father is a grieving alcoholic, and it just falls upon Sal to try and save what is a struggling motel. And that sort of spirals out of control for him. He's a teenager. And then Noor wants to get out of Juniper Beach. She's applying to colleges, but she can't tell her uncle that. Her uncle's very resentful of her and wants her to stay working at the liquor store. So I think it's called All My Rage. And, these kids definitely have this rage for different reasons. They're both angry about certain things. And, like Sal's angry about the adults in his life and his parents not showing up for him and his father's addiction. And Noor is also disappointed by the grown-ups in her life, but also this like daily racism she's facing. There's a lot of Islamophobia in this book. What I liked about the rage piece is that the author allows this female character to experience rage. And I think that that's important to show that like all people get angry and they have to work through that anger and they have to express that anger. And as I said before, there's a lot of trauma for both these characters, like buried trauma. So there's definitely grief in this book, but there's also love. It is a love story. And that is one of the best parts about it. It's very much like a star-crossed love story, kind of. They're friends, then they're not friends, and then Noor and Sal are just always kind of drawn to each other. And so it's great to read this book and see, like, how are they going to connect again? Are they going to connect again? Is this it for them? And then another part of this book that I really loved was the author includes so much music. It's really important to Noor to always be listening to music. It's how she just like calms herself and removes herself from situations. And so you can make a playlist from this book, which I always think is really cool to do. And then besides having specific songs and musicians, the author also mentions so many books that the characters are reading, and she's very specific about it. And what I thought was really interesting is she will mention books, like she'll talk about The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. If you read the acknowledgments, you know that like Nicola Yoon is part of this author's friend group. So she's really including like a lot of books. She does that throughout of authors that she knows, and it's like she's giving them a boost. I thought that was a really cool way to connect her book as a thank you, really, to like her group who supported her when she was writing it. And the other thing that this book deals with a lot is storytelling. Misbah, the mother, wants to own a motel because she wants to tell stories. And the backstory for the author is that she grew up. Her parents came from Pakistan. They bought a hotel. She grew up in a hotel helping her parents. And she really credits that with making her a storyteller, because the number of people that you interact with in a hotel. So I think that that's a really cool way to think about collecting stories and meeting different people. And then one more piece of this book that I really liked is each chapter starts with a stanza from Elizabeth Bishop's poem, One Art, which is a really great poem about losing things. And Elizabeth Bishop starts losing small things and then bigger things and then bigger things. And the way that Sabaa Tahir ties that into the book and how these characters are experiencing small losses and then bigger losses and bigger losses, and how that's going to spiral for them and what that does. I just really loved the way she framed it. So I highly recommend it. As I said before, I'm so glad that it won the award, and I'm glad that I read it. It is great. So it is the last great book that I read. Yeah, so that's All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. Do either of you have anything else to add?
I missed Biblio Files so much, and I'm so happy to be back hearing about great books that you've read.
I know, it's just really fun to talk about books too. So, well, that is it then. Thank you all for joining us for another episode of Biblio Files. As always, we love to hear from you what you're reading. What is the last great book that you've read? We want to know. So you can click the link below and leave us a comment. We would love that. And catch us next time on the next episode of Biblio Files. Thanks.